All right, we are live.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cody. Call the meeting to order. Teresa, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Ron,
Here.
Joycelyn,
Here.
Gordon,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Michael, Lori,
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi,
Here.
Brent,
Here.
Noel, Rita,
Here.
Dr. Wilson,
Here.
Michelle. Here. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Next matter is to approve the agenda. We have to entertain a motion for that.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Second? Second. Second, it's been moved in second to approve the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed and abstaining. Okay. Next matter is to approve the consent agenda. That includes the minutes of the previous meeting and expenses.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and second that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? None, thank you. Okay, next matter is visitors' comments. We have, I believe, 5 people, Daniel, Cindy, Devin, Kelly, and Jordan, to address us on matters germane to the library. Because of the numbers, it's been proposed to limit these to 5 minutes each. Always enough time.
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes.
You started
I
off.
want to be very respectful of your time.
I know.
Well, thank you. My name's Dan Purdom. I talked about my startup milling business that I started in my retirement, but more people call me Dr. Dan Purdom. I'm a family physician and a geriatrician. And in my life before retirement, I served as physician leader for a number of medical organizations. And I've had the opportunity to work with boards such as this one in the past, both as a board member and as an employee. I understand the challenges and responsibilities you face as you hire leadership, set priorities for the organization, and secure adequate funding. I have 3 concerns that I would like to quickly express to you tonight. First, I'm very concerned about the current management style of this board. We need to hear your plans going forward for this tremendous community resource that is Mid-Continent Public Library, casting the vision, some would call it, and how you plan to fund that vision. That will then allow the CEO to direct his or her staff to fulfill that vision. What I worry about and what I see is board members frequently trying to micromanage the staff and to be involved in day-to-day operations. We need you to actually do your job and to do it well. We need you to communicate to all of us where you plan on taking the Mid-Continent Public Library system as honestly as open and as openly as possible, and allow the person you hired to lead that effort to get on with their job. Second, we need you to fulfill the promises made when the voters in Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties passed Proposition L in 2016 by overwhelming numbers. We ask you to make our library system better with new and renovated library buildings, expansion of access to services through additional hours, and increased investment in library materials, all to serve our growing diverse communities across our 3 counties. We gave you the resources you needed, and we fully expect you to honor the promises made. I am very concerned that this board will not honor those promises. Due to very poor choices by this board, we're faced with some financial difficulties. In spite of this, we must find a way to continue with our capital projects in East Independence and in Riverside, where the city of Riverside, I think, has committed significant funds towards that project. So we need to grow, and we need to grow our program services and collections at all of our branches. If it comes, I know we have some cash flow issues because of the investments in the capital fund. If we have to take a small hit in the capital fund investments in order to fund these projects going forward, that certainly seems to me to be less of a cost to the community and to the programs to move forward with that rather than delay the programs further. If our children and our communities are to be competitive in the 21st century, we do need you to move this stuff forward. We need you to make progress. Finally, we all ask for transparency and honesty. Our state sunshine law requires that all public governmental bodies shall give notice of the time, date, place of each meeting and its tentative agenda in a manner reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered. Unfortunately, too often the agendas and documentation provided to our citizens about upcoming meetings of this body and its committees are incomplete, cryptic, and frequently less than timely. We deserve better. Yesterday, I filed a sunshine law complaint with the Missouri Attorney General's office on this issue. I know that this can be improved going forward, and I look forward to working with you so that we can all get clear, timely, complete communications from this board and its committees. The citizens of our library district deserve nothing less. I know firsthand that public service is a challenging role, and I thank you for your willingness to step forward. But we need better. Thank you for your time.
Cindy?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Peterson. I've been a homeowner in Liberty for 25 years. I'm an active library card user. I contribute to the monthly statistics of door counts, physical and virtual checkouts. I've typed this out on a public computer at the library and printed it out. I watch board meetings and committee meetings on YouTube. Microphones pick up not just voices of people speaking, but sounds, coughing, throat clearing, sighs, papers being moved around, and the noises of food being actively eaten. These sounds make it difficult to hear the meeting and process. I'm sure you can work together to find a way to make the audio experience for those listening from home improved. Posting negative comments on social media, writing unfavorable letters to newspaper editors, passing notes to each other during meetings, not showing focused respect during public comment periods, interrupting and talking over one another during meetings, not following basic parliamentary procedure to conduct an organized meeting, members not identifying themselves by name before speaking or voting. One must have expertise and a steady hand to avoid controversy while serving on a board. Several members of the MCPL board, frankly, don't have this. The result has been chaotic meetings and an angry public. This library system has gone from the director being honored with the 2014 IMLS National Medal for Museum and Library Service Award presented by Michelle Obama to now headlining the news for its board's divisive and discriminatory practices and decisions. I am proud of the staff who serve Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. Not only do they help to put items and resources into the hands of the patrons that they serve, but they have repeatedly been thrust into difficult discussions with the public. They had to sell the levy increase, Proposition L, to the public, and now they are answering the unanswerable questions about why it was lowered and how the budget will be trimmed. They have been questioned about the diversity, equity, and inclusion report, which showed pay disparity between male and female employees and the lack of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color as employees. On YouTube, I observed members of the board devaluing staff's professional decision-making at every meeting. I've witnessed staff's knowledge of contracts being questioned when it's outside of that employee's job responsibility. This happened just yesterday during the Finance Committee meeting. There is an internal chaos within MCPL. You are forcing staff to operate in skeleton mode with a reduced budget and reduced funding. This will create even more dramatic cuts for the next financial year. Libraries reach people who have been left behind in today's economy or need help navigating in our complex world. There aren't many truly public places left in America that welcome everyone. How far are you, acting as one united board, willing to stretch our libraries and staffing? I'd like to now reference the board policy, which was revised on January 19th, 2021, page 20, under public services. I printed this from the website. It is page 20 under public services. This reads, Mid-Continent Public Library will provide the best library experience in the United States. The closing words from the MCPL board meeting held on September 20th of 2022 were from Dr. Yemi Pandolfi. She said, I think we are providing good services for less money. Should the board policy be revised to Mid-Continent Public Library will provide a good library experience in the United States? Shall we revise this?
Thank you. Devin?
My name is Devin Benzant. I was previously a resident of Clay County. I'm now in Jackson County, but I'm within the system still. You'll forgive me for having a slightly different format than the rest of the speakers, but I'll try to keep my remarks brief and succinct. The board is not subtle. It is not sneaky. The actions undertaken by certain members of this board very obviously betray their motivations. The budget cuts and executive meddling they performed have directly resulted in fewer programs, fewer public resources, a higher customer to staff ratio, and a more stressful environment for all of those involved. This is not growing pains. It is not an oversight. It is not an unfortunate inevitability of the economy. It is an attack. Members of the board do not want the community to have access to these resources. They do not want the undereducated, lower class, or technologically illiterate to vote. They do not want them to read. They do not want them to have access to passports or housing relief or adult education programs. They do not want their children to think for themselves or consider new ideas or be confident in their own abilities. This is not just an attack on library staff or an attack on open information access. It is an attack on the communities those libraries serve. This attack is not motivated by financial concerns, so often insist. It is a well-coordinated, very transparent ploy by those with a small amount of power to desperately cling to it. These efforts are not supported by the voters, and they do not benefit the counties the board is meant to represent. They amount to nothing more than ostentatious political posturing. The maliciousness with which they have failed our communities is repugnant, but even more so, the contempt they've shown for the principles on which a library stands reveals a special kind of moral bankruptcy.
Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Lindsay, and I am a resident of Platte County. I have lived in Platte County my entire life. I frequented the Parkville, Boardwalk, and Riverside branches while growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, so our summers were often spent finding free and cheap options for entertainment. The library was essential to my family. We spent countless hours there. I learned how to cook, taught myself beginner sign language, and learned way too much information about World War II, all because I was able to access information through books, internet usage, and programs put on by the library for free. Things that I would not have been able to do as easily without the library, since my family couldn't just go out and buy the books at Barnes & Noble. The library is such a necessary place, especially now with inflation and a recession looming, for so many that do not have access to information and resources due to economic hardship. Parents use the library to give their kids access to books and reading material to help them learn literacy skills. Job seekers use the public computers to fill out resumes and apply for jobs, since almost all applications are online these days. Students use the Wi-Fi to do their homework or take online classes. All of these resources the library offers better our community by creating opportunities for citizens to learn and grow, which is what worries me most about the recent decisions made by some of the library board members to pull money from these resources. I am a tax-paying voting citizen of Platte County and voted for the levy in 2016. What better place for my tax dollars to go than the public library, a place I owe so much of my childhood and adulthood to? A decision made by the majority of the community, but this decision was taken away without any input from the community, or as the founding fathers would say, taxation without representation. Though in this case, you are taking away that taxation, the same principle stands. We, the community, had no representation in this decision. The reduction will save the community meager amounts of money in comparison to how much it will hurt us and the library in the long run. What worries me more, in my opinion, is it will not stop at a few cents in a reduction of the levy. And we as a community have very little representation in those decisions being made. When I was a kid, it was up to me and my family to decide what I read. We have members on this board who have the power to make decisions that affect the entire community with no input from the community, but have made it very clear that they believe in censoring materials from the library because of their viewpoints. It is our First Amendment right to be able to access any information freely, and one of the library's top missions to give everyone the freedom to read. This is why we offer materials on many different viewpoints, so as to give everyone access to the information they seek. There are plenty of books that I don't agree with in this library, but if I don't like it, I just don't read it. Censoring the library is a direct assault on the First Amendment, seeing as it is one of the only places left for people to freely access information with no cost. In summation, defunding and censorship will only hurt our community. It will hurt our most vulnerable populations. It will hurt the staff. It will hurt the economy. If you were really worried about saving people money from cutting the levy, you wouldn't cut funding to the resources that directly help people earn more. As Ronald Reagan stated, government is the people's business, and every man, woman, and child is a shareholder with the first penny of tax paid. With all the profound wording of our federal constitution, probably the most meaningful words are the first three: we, the people. And those of us here today have been elected to the constitutional office and to the legislature are in that the three-word phrase. We are of the people. We are chosen by the people to see that no permanent structure of government ever encroaches on the people's freedom or assumes the power beyond that which has freely been granted to us, the people. We stand between the taxpayer and the tax spender. Thank you.
My name is Jordan Noland. I'm a resident of Jackson County. Let me make it very clear that I am addressing you as a community member. I don't make a lot of money. I have student loans, rent to pay, and bills like everyone else. As someone in the profession that I'm in, it would be an understatement to say that I like books. Reading has always been an escape for me from the stresses of our increasingly chaotic world. When I began to immerse myself further into the library as a penny-pinching adult, I began to take full use of its immense resources. Last year, I started learning Italian with the use of Mango Languages, which would have cost me $80 a year without MCPL. I researched how to fix a certain part of my aging vehicle with the use of Chilton manuals, a cost of nearly $30 for the online manuals, and many, many hours on YouTube if I didn't have the library. And as for books, in 2021, I checked out 489 books. Thank goodness for Goodreads. I figured out the amount the library saved me if I had bought every single book I checked out. You ready for this? $8,775 and some change. So in 2021 alone, the library saved me nearly $9,000, if you count only the resources I used and the books I checked out, not to mention the programs I attended, which tack on an additional $500 or so, give or take. So let's round it to 10,000 then, that the library saved me in 2021. To put that in perspective, That's about a third of my annual salary. Your recent budget cuts claim to save the average taxpayer $5 whole. And that's not even enough to pay for a single book that I read or a resource that I used. I can't even buy a decent dinner for that. Well, thank you, but you can keep that $5 because a well-funded library saves me far more money than your backhanded, thoughtless cuts from public funds. You all might not set foot in the library, but I do every day. And I know hundreds of people who do the same. Hundreds of people who use the library for its free internet. Hundreds of people who teach their children to read with our books and resources. Hundreds of people who want nothing more than to exist in a space that doesn't require them to spend any money. Cuts mean cuts to resources, databases, periodicals, collections. Cuts mean more demand on an already tired staff. You may try to hide these cuts from the public, but we're watching. We're watching as you strip away funding from one of the last great resources we have in our society. Please, start listening to taxpayers who actually use the library. Stop making decisions on your own opinions and beliefs. We see you, and we're watching.
Thank you. I know some of you had material that you're reading. If you care to have them left with Teresa, they can be incorporated into the actual minutes of the meeting too. Of course, it's recorded on YouTube, but if you want to have them in the paper file, that's certainly an option you have. Okay, thank you. Awards and recognition.
You want to introduce our new board member?
Sure. My name is Brent Schalmeyer. I'm a Jackson County trustee. It's my pleasure to introduce the person to my right, Bob Johnson, who joins the library board. There are 4 trustees from each of the 3 counties. And so Bob replaces John Laney, who many of you will know as a longtime library board member. And so I want to accord Bob an opportunity to introduce himself because how I might do it might differ from how he would do it.
Yeah, just thank you, Brent. And again, my name is Bob Johnson. I'm from Lee Summit. It is an honor for me to serve as a member of this board. I participated in the election process in 2016, but a little about myself. I have been in public office before. I spent 23 years in the state legislature and 16 years on the Lee Summit City Council. Because those are part-time positions, I did other things. So I was a home builder for a long time, from roughly 78 or so to 2012. I also have taught on an adjunct basis at the University of Central Missouri for a long time. I taught principles of macroeconomics. I taught principally personal finance. Now, I also want to add on the econs. I'm actually the kind of adult that will actually read notes of the Federal Reserve's Open Market Committee. I don't think anybody else here probably. I'm trying to figure out, do I agree or disagree with the Fed on what the economy will do in the next 12 months? As I know all of you want to do that. And I also was a member of the Missouri Labor and Industrial Relations Commission at one time. That's the last public body or non-judicial body that people can appeal their decision on workers' comp and unemployment comp. So again, I want to close just by saying I really appreciate being a member. As I heard you this evening, I'm sitting here thinking, I only knew about this a few days ago. So it was an interesting presentation. But again, I'm looking forward to serving on this board. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Welcome. Although the recognition typically within the library, the proper to acknowledge that Joyce and receiving acknowledgement for her accomplishments in the community from by organizations sponsored by local media, local newspaper and independents, as well as a very, very substantial corporate presence in Kansas City. So again, Joyce, congratulations. Next matter is the election of a new treasurer, and I guess surprising to no one, the bylaws and policies are a bit sparse in how we do that. So unless the board, which is 7, suggests otherwise, I think it's appropriate to have nominations from the floor. If anybody's nominated a wish, they can certainly address the board, and after that, conduct a vote. So I'd like to start it off. I'd like to nominate Bob Johnson to be the treasurer to replace John, who was a great fellow and certainly missed. As Bob mentioned, he has an undergraduate and graduate training in commerce and finance. He runs his own business and served in the legislature in Jeff City for a number of terms. What strikes me most about him is that Bob was appointed by Frank White, who we all know from Jackson County is a Democrat. Shortly after I heard Bob was on board, I got a call from Jerry Nolte, a Republican, the presiding commissioner in Clay. And both of them, from complete opposite sides of the political spectrum, did nothing but speak very, very highly and with great esteem for Bob individually as well as his credentials. So I'd like to nominate Bob. And he, yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to second the nomination.
Thank you. Do we have any other persons who would like to nominate themselves or another?
I make a motion, we close nominations. Can I do that?
Good. The sound says, okay. Bob's been nominated to serve as our president. All in favor? That was a Florian slip for you. So all in favor of nominating Bob as the treasurer, please saying aye.
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 It's unanimous.
Thank you.
My condolences, congratulations. Thanks, Bob.
Do I get to read the notes of the Federal Reserve still?
No.
You can, but you're not required to report on here.
Okay.
We need to finish the motion. You said all in favor. We didn't finish the motion. Call. Yeah.
Okay, we're doing my vote. Let's have a roll call vote.
Okay. That's what you need.
Also, Michelle mentioned too that I may have been speaking too fast for the YouTube, so.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do the roll call vote. Okay.
Please.
Michelle. Aye. Dr. Wilson. Aye. Rita.
Aye.
Noel. Brent.
Aye.
Dr. Pandolfi.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Michael. Bob.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Joyce Lynn.
Aye.
Ron.
Aye.
Okay, we have a motion passed. Carries.
Thank you. Next matter is.
Yes.
There you go, thank you. Yes.
Okay, on the screen, that's the operating fund at the end of October. For tax revenue, we received over $1 million. And that's about $100,000 than more than last year. This is about 17% increase. Most of the tax dollar delinquent tax, and we will start to receive a new tax dollar in late November, except the Platte County. People in Platte County started to pay the 2022 tax revenue in late October, and we received about $30,000 so far. The operating revenue is about $1.4 million. That's about $2 million or close to 11% higher than last year. The next page is the operating expenditures. For payroll and benefits, we spent a close to $11 million, 32% of the budget. For library materials, we spent a close to $5 million, close to 43% of the budget. All other operational accounts, about $3.1 million, close to 30% of the budget. Those percentages are based on the new budget passed last month. Also, in your the packet of board agenda, from page 31 to page 38, you will see a complete list of all payments made by the library in October. Next page will be debt service fund. It shows all payments made for principal and interest since 2019. And in August 2022, we made an interest-only payment for about $1.4 million. And the remaining debt balance, principal balance, about $58.7 million. Next page is the capital project fund. Top one is the Story Center. I believe this is the last year to complete the project of Story Center. And the new budget is $54,150. For the new Riverside, so far we spent about $709,000, including a new land for $650,000. For the capital improvement plan, we paid about $3.2 million so far this year. The last page is the health insurance fund. The total amount of contributions from employer and employee, the $1.2 million. That's based on the new rate of the contribution from the employer. The fixed costs, that's the reinsurance and the administrative fees, is close to $400,000. The medical claims is about $746,000. We had a cash on hand about $1.7 million. The fund reserve balance is about $1.37 million. That's my report for the month.
Thank you, Ron. Jim, can you present
Yes.
statistics?
Jim, typically we do statistics under librarian's report, but Jim needs to leave early tonight. So we have bumped the quarterly statistics report higher in the agenda.
Thank you for doing so. It is my youngest second birthday. I'd love to see him before he goes to bed. Okay, so quarterly statistics report. It was just 2 months ago that we did this last because we were a little bit behind. Those of you remember, we've got a new statistical analyst in. But the last one that we did was actually the fourth quarter, so it was the annual. We looked at a whole year's worth of numbers. So this time it's the first quarter of our fiscal year, July, August, September. So Cody, if you can go to the next slide. Can you see? Okay. All right, remember our core measures: active customers, customer satisfaction, and transactions, which is customer use. We talked a little bit about this in finance committee meeting yesterday. Transactions, and we'll get there in a minute, is not only circulation, but a bunch of other things as well. We'll talk about that. Get the next slide, please, Cody. First one is active customers. All right, you can keep going. Okay, so again, this is sort of like the annual stats from last year. Again, as we're in sort of the theme here is as we continue to emerge from COVID, we continue to see increases in activity all across our system. So active cardholders now, we're comparing quarter one of 22-23 with quarter one of 21-22. And we were seeing a 10% increase in active cardholders. Now, remember, an active cardholder is somebody who has used their card in the last 12 months. It's not everybody who holds a card. That number is significantly higher than 273,000. But that's the number who have used them actively. Now, what makes a user active? Checking out a book, computer usage, a few other things. But like if you come to a program, that does not create activity on your card. If you just come in and read the newspaper, that does not create activity on your card. So the 273,000 should always be read as the minimum number of people who are using their library in the last year, not the maximum. Okay, new card registrations, obviously, is more activity often begets more activity. So we've got a 25% increase in new card registrations. That does not include the student cards. Those all exist via MOUs with the school district. And so that's handled separately. So market penetration and cardholder retention, I'm going to save those two. We'll look at them on the next slide. And then our active student accounts have actually dropped just a hair from 61.3 to 57.9%. But the actual number of active student cards has probably increased because we added 2 more school districts this year. Is that right? Just 1 more school district this year. Okay. All right. Next slide, please, Cody.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
On the active student accounts, you see the usage dropping because coming out of COVID, schools may be less dependent on internet and
Not entirely sure. And that's something we'll have to start looking at to see what the activity looked like in there. A lot of that usage is generated, through database usage and things like that. So it also is true that we see a little bit of a decrease at the beginning of every year because, right when everybody comes on, they might use it and then it drops off. Okay, now can I get the next slide? Okay, so this is one of the few places we can compare ourselves with other library systems. This comes out of our Savannah platform with our partners with Orange Boy. You can see we continuing again to come out of COVID, our percent of active households. Now what that means is the percentage of households in our district who have at least 1 active card. So, if a parent is checking out books for their kids, that's a possibility. That means there's 1 active card in that household. So we've seen a steady increase out of since quarter 3 of 2021, and we continue to outpace our brethren libraries. We'd like to see them in the same place we are. I think I said that the last time. Now over at cardholder retention, you can see it's a little bit of a different story. We've continued to climb a little bit until this last quarter. And we're gonna take a look at this. We just received these numbers from our folks at Orange Boy. So I'm curious, when all the other numbers have been climbing, how we saw a little bit of a drop in cardholder retention there. That's a bit of a surprise to me, and I don't know. I wish I knew. I should know, but I don't know why or whether our student cards are in that group or not. So we'll ask. Our statistical research analyst, I said you will meet him at some point, and that would have been tonight. But his family welcomed a new baby last week. So it's just little people all over the place. Okay, can I get the next slide, please? Okay, customer satisfaction is our next piece. Go ahead and go on, Cody. Remember, our primary indicator is Net Promoter Score. People who get surveyed and they rate us from 0 to 10 and whether they would recommend the library to others. If you say 9 or 10, you're a promoter. 6 or below, you're a detractor. And that's a Net Promoter Score. Okay, go ahead, Cody. Our baseline at the very beginning of all this was 91.8. We set a goal of 92. Again, that's not a huge increase, but when you're bumping up against 100, any gain is pretty good. We actually, we set this back in 18. So, through COVID and all the construction, we've dropped a little bit down to 90.7. We're still considerably over our library brethren, and libraries are considerably over just about everybody else. So a standard library NPS score is about 85. Across all industries, a standard NPS score is like 44, I think. So people love libraries. And what do they love? You can see it over here. Obviously books, helpful. I always like this, staff, helpful, friendly. It says a lot about people who work in our system. Okay, can I get the next one, please, Cody? Okay, and finally, transactions. Go ahead. Okay, in 21-22, we'd set a goal of 10.6 million transactions. That was, at the time we were setting the goal, we were still unsure when we would be partially open, fully open. We weren't sure. We undershot it pretty significantly. Because we ended up being open almost the entire year. So we ended up at 11.9 million. This year, we are actually setting the highest goal we've ever set. at 13 million. We hit 13 million almost exactly in 18-19. The last year, COVID didn't affect our numbers, and we're seeing that steady climb back. So we're setting that goal at 13 million again for this year. Again, you can see we call it the lasagna pan over here, the things that make it up: physical item checkouts, digital item checkouts, database retrievals, other digital services, and then the physical things people do in branches: library PCs, Wi-Fi sessions, meeting rooms, program attendance, all of those things. All right, go ahead, Cody, please. Okay, so break some of that down, and you can see again, increases. We're still coming out of reduced service. So circulation saw an 8% increase quarter over quarter, or year over year, I should say, in the first quarter. Use of virtual resources were up 4%. Internet accesses, again, that's what somebody's physically doing inside a branch, up 14%. Programming is the one thing that still was not going on in the first quarter. So when you look at program attendance for Q1 of 21-22, what you're looking at is all virtual attendance. And then in Q1 of this year, we were up at 47,000. And then use of physical resources, a lot of that is meeting rooms. Not only are our buildings open and people are using them, but also more of them have meeting rooms than we ever have before, because we've been going through the building process all the way through. And so our meeting room usage is really increasing quickly. So overall, you look at total transactions, a 10% increase year over year. And there's one more, Cody. Okay, so this is just our customer transaction trends. It's the last 4 years and then the first quarter of this year. So this will be the only one with 5. It starts to give you a sense. It's really hard to compare anything to these COVID years. They're just, we've looked at doing some projections on like what would it look like, but some services were up, some were down, some were. It's hard to build that model. So one of the things you can start to do, I think, is look at. We'll leave the 5th year on. We normally only do 4 years, but we'll leave the 5th one on because this 5th year back is a good one to compare to. So, any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, next is our old or unfinished business, the conduct committee. 2 sections. This first, is there anything that should be in the open session, or would you prefer to go to
That
closed?
we're going into closed session to discuss contract and hiring.
Okay. Before we move to go to closed session, I just let people know I had a medical emergency in the family. So Joycelyn, Michael, Michelle, and certainly John. I covered everything when I was gone, and I really appreciate their, certainly the effort and the courtesies extended. So, did we have a motion to move into closed session?
That motion.
I would say for personnel.
Do you want me to read that? Or I'll make that motion to go into closed session for the
On the board.
personnel.
Second,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we move to closed session. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hold on.
Roll call. What's that?
Do roll
Do a
call.
roll? Okay.
All right. Okay. Joycelyn,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Bob,
Aye.
Michael, Lori,
Yes.
Dr. Pandolfi,
Yes.
Brent,
Yes.
Noel, Rita, Dr. Wilson,
Yes.
Michelle. Yes. Ron,
Yes.
thank you.